under the many hats that we wear. So I thought it would be great to have someone come in and talk to us about content, about the psychology of content. This is actually scientifically related. So lots of things that we do and how we do the colors we use, all of these things are great in telling our story. And as you can see, I am a little passionate about that. I love doing this stuff, so I am ecstatically excited to hear what Dwaynia has to share with us about that. So without further ado, I want to present to you our speaker for today, Ms. Dwaynia Wilkerson. Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I was just asking her if she's gonna keep me posted on my time because I get excited. Okay, so my name is Dwaynia Wilkerson, and I am not named after my father. I just got lucky and got that name. And I write content for a living. I taught English for 11 years at the university level, and when I started teaching, I knew that I wouldn't end teaching, but I didn't know what the next thing was going to be. So I have an engineer friend who called me one day, and he was like, hey, I need you to come in and help out on the project. We need someone to help us with content. And I was like, yeah, because he's my friend, and I wanted to help him. And he was like, so send me an email with your rate. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna get paid? Like, I'm not just doing this for free? So that was my introduction into being paid for writing. Because when you come from creative backgrounds, you're kind of often led to believe that you can't get paid for it. But if you look at everything, every single thing in this room has some words written on it. Somebody has to be paid to put those words there. So I started with the content writing, and I found that my real passion was helping people brand their businesses in a non-boring way. Because how many of you like the boring things? By show of hands. Okay, so in a non-boring way. So I like to say that I help people with content that is thoughtful, fun to read, and won't put your people to sleep. Okay? So just so that we are all on the same page, let me give you the definition of content and content marketing. So content marketing is when you publish anything besides your traditional ads. You all are familiar with Facebook ads and sponsored posts and billboards and all those things. That's your advertising and your marketing. Your content marketing, though, is just those random, or what we sometimes think of as random Facebook posts, Instagram posts, your website, your blog material, your pamphlets and brochures. That is your content, and that is your content marketing. Your content and content marketing should be less intrusive and more native to your audience than your ads and billboards and those sorts of things. So is everybody clear on our content? I'm just going to pick my paper up because I can't see that far. Okay, so why is your content marketing important? It's important because consumers don't buy products and services, they buy emotions. How many of you have heard that before?
Yeah.
Okay, how many of you are a little offended? Because we're all consumers. How many of you are offended by someone saying you don't buy based on what you actually need, you buy based on your feelings? You're offended a little? Okay, anybody else? Okay, so oftentimes when I say that, people do give me a really mean side eye, or like the gentleman in the back, he just looked at me like, so that is not negative. It doesn't mean that you just go into a crying frenzy and you go out shopping, or you're angry and you max out your credit card, or you're having that midlife crisis and you go buy a new car. It could mean those things, but not necessarily. All that means is that you buy based on connections, which Vicki already mentioned at this morning. You buy based on connections. You buy based on the vibe that you get. How many of you have gone into a place and you sat down across from someone and they had something that you actually needed, but they were either rude or they didn't seem interested in you, and you're like, I need what you have, but I'm not getting it from you. Okay? So that's what that means. There's nothing negative about it. It's just the truth of the matter. We do buy based on how people relate to us and how they make us feel. Okay, so to tap into those emotions, we need 3 primary things that we're going to cover really quickly. Brand voice, storytelling, and the 80-20 rule. And so those 3 things are important because they help you make the connection with your audience. And it's also what sets you apart from your competitor, because who wants to be like their competitor, right? There should be something different about you. Even if you're offering the very same thing as the person next door, there should be something different and special about you that rises up and attracts people to you. And lastly, it's how you attract a loyal following. How many of you in here have an iPhone? How many of you get a new iPhone just because?
I mean, you don't want to admit it.
Right, yeah, how many of you don't want to admit you get a new iPhone just because? I mean, the new iPhone comes out and it's like, oh, I can't hear anymore. So go get a new one. So that's like that thing. Apple just has this thing that we really don't need our text messages on our watches, but why not? You know, because we can. And so they have built such a following that whatever they put out, people are going to purchase it. How many of you in here are Beyonce fans? Anybody going to the concert in Atlanta or Nashville? Okay, she's another. No advertising, she drops an album and it's like platinum in a day or 2. Maybe not that soon, but it goes pretty quickly. So that's the type of relationship that we want to create with our audiences. We want them to, number one, trust us and love us enough that we can put out anything, not that we would, but they trust us and love us enough that they will just come to us for our offerings. Okay, so now we're going to talk about brand voice and why it's important. So if you think about your favorite brand, most of you can probably come up with like 3 adjectives that describe that brand. You want your audience and your customers to be able to do the very same thing. And you can't do that if you have the same old, boring, bland, put you to sleep content. You have to have something that separates you from the next person. And it doesn't matter your industry. Some people rely on the fact that they're in a boring industry, like finance or accounting. They rely on the fact that they're in the boring, so-called boring industries that they don't have to create content that's interesting and thought-provoking and fun. But don't we all need banks and accounting services?
Yes.
So why not take that opportunity because you have something that so many people need to separate yourself from the pack? And that's where your brand voice comes into action. So your brand voice should have personality. How many of you, I'm so on a hip hop and R&B kick right now, so forgive my references. But how many of you are, if you're not fans, at least familiar with Kanye West? Okay. So Kanye West, I like to use him as an example because he is a brand. He has a voice. Can anybody like attach a word to his voice? Arrogant. Okay, what's another? Narcissistic. Okay. Eccentric. We're gonna say that's a positive. Okay, so that's what everything that he does, says, produces, all of his social media, it all revolves around those things. And all of those words that you all listed, they're absolute characterizations of who he is and who his brand is. If you think about Oprah, what's a word we can use for Oprah?
Warm. Generous.
Generous, informative, authentic. Okay, trustworthy. Okay, so if you called up all of your clients today when you leave here, and you say, hey, what are 3 words that describe my brand or me? And they're stumbling to give you something, you're doing something wrong, okay? Because you should at least be able to get some type of common consensus among your people. And I find that the primary reason that people don't really take on a definite brand, voice, brand personality is because they're afraid. And they're afraid because they don't want to ostracize anybody. But all of us in this room, if we have something to sell, we have a, oh my God, I only have 5 minutes left. Okay. We have a target audience, right? So you're not trying to attract everybody. So why are you worried about repelling anybody? You don't want all the people. You just need your people. And so if you can stand up and identify what your voice is, my voice on my website, in real life, on my social media, it's straightforward, it's honest. Sometimes it could be a little not that nice, but but it's always in a loving way. Okay. And lastly, storytelling, really quickly. When you create stories,